Dr. Saladino, when you're recommending this diet, what risks do you discuss with your patients?
I don't think there are any risks to eating animal foods exclusively. There are no risks in terms of kidney function. There are many studies which show that high-protein diets do not affect kidney function. There are no studies interventionally that show that eating meat is going to increase the risk of any single cancer. There are no risks to eating the foods that we have been eating as humans for our entire existence.
As an attorney, I would ask you, you're a medical doctor, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And you are a psychiatrist, am I correct?
Right, I did a residency in psychiatry.
So what do you know about nutrition?
Where
did you gain your background in nutrition?
Listen, this is, I think...
No, you listen to me and answer my question. Now I'm asking you to tell us where your background emanates from.
I went to medical school, and I studied nutrition in medical school, and I studied nutrition independently. One of the crazy things about medical school is that it teaches you how to read articles. I'm a doctor. I know how to read articles.
So have you
I know how
done
to read
any
the literature.
independent testing? Have you written any articles that was as suggested by the physicians who've been here today?
What does writing articles have to do with my knowledge of
Well,
nutrition?
because I could become you. I could be you as an expert because I read all of the data and all of the articles on this subject. Now I'm an expert? That doesn't make me an expert.
With the proper background and with the medical training, like, medicine needs to think about teaching doctors more nutrition in medical school. But it is up to us to educate ourselves. Just because there's a degree that says a doctor doesn't mean that we have or don't have medical nutritional knowledge.
The bottom line is you practice psychiatry, am I correct?
I practice medicine.
You practice psychiatry, is that correct?
I practice medicine.
So what makes you an expert in this?
Because, an expert in what? An expert in understanding human physiology? This is medicine. The separation of humans into organ systems doesn't serve the patient. To say that because I'm a psychiatrist, I don't know about nutrition is a completely...
I didn't say that.
That's
your
what you were inferring.
expertise is
That's what
the
you were
mind.
inferring. Well, where does the inflammation come from that causes depression and anxiety? It comes from the body. It doesn't come from the brain.
It's a scary thought process. That is all you need to do is read articles to make you an expert. I want to know what kind of testing you've done, what kind of data you have, what you yourself have found regarding these issues.
I'm not sure
other than what reliance is on other people's
I'm not sure I understand your question because that's how
You don't want to listen to my question because you know I'm right.
No, you're wrong.
May I ask you a question? When you talk about the animal diet...
Wait a second.
When you talk
I need to be given the floor to respond to this. This isn't fair.
Okay.
Right? Anyone gathers data by reading articles. Anyone gathers data by learning. What you're suggesting is not a fair criticism of me.
I'm a board-certified physician nutrition specialist.
Right.
I have been practicing nutrition exclusively. I'm trained as an internist. I was originally board-certified in internal medicine. I have spent 20 years. You've been dallying in this for a few years, reading articles. I've been doing it, working with patients. My oath is first do no harm. And I am not a plant-based person. I don't advocate only plants. I think meat, I think there is nutrient density. I think getting rid of the processed foods and the toxins in processed foods, that's what's damaging
Show me
the gut.
study that meat is dangerous.
Show me the study that broccoli is dangerous to lupus.
Okay, wait. I will show you the study.
Can you please just provide the name of one reputable medical journal that supports the meat diet? That's what they are asking.
Right.
Thank you.
So in 1930, there was a study published in the British Medical Journal of a year-long investigation of 2 people in Bellevue Medical Hospital who were eating an exclusive carnivore diet. And during that period of time, these people experienced no negative effects, no dangerous changes in blood pressure, kidney function. They only experienced good things, a little bit of weight loss, and came out of the study saying that they felt better than when they started. So there have been prolonged, detailed studies of a full carnivore diet.
It's a one-year study from 1930.
Of 2 people.
Has there been anything since 1930 with more than 2 people?
There was a study at Harvard done looking at the carnivore diet with regard to gut flora. And so they put people on a carnivore diet for 1 week, and they looked at changes in gut flora, and they didn't see any change in the microbiome in terms of alpha diversity. There was
1 week. Literally, there are thousands and thousands of studies that show the benefits of fruits, vegetables, nuts. And we're not saying meat's bad for you. I ate meat last night. But you keep getting back to, no one is saying meat is bad for you. What we are saying is, if all you eat for your whole life ever is just meat, that's not good. I don't have to be a doctor. I'm just like, I'm blown away right now.
One of the examples I saw that was kind of, I don't know, like flagship example of like a call to authority was when you went on the doctor's show. And I was disgusted, dude. I was like, at the time, I think you were just like starting to get like your social media going and kind of like getting a hype train behind you as like the carnivore diet guy. And how did that opportunity come about? And did you know they were gonna like blindside the shit out of you going into it?
So I had two sisters that I met through social media, Sarah and Ashley Armstrong, who had like essentially both been diagnosed with lupus and amenorrhea. They had high titers of ANA. They had malar rashes. They had essentially lupus-like syndromes of autoimmunity. They tried like vegan diets and that didn't help. And then they tried carnivore and it actually really improved their autoimmunity. Their journey was long. They both actually were able to regain reproductive function when they actually started including more carbohydrates in their diet after carnivore. But cutting out the plant foods was significantly beneficial for their autoimmune condition. And they were eating some raw food. And so the Daily Mail got a hold of it and was like trying to make this spectacle of, oh my God, these crazy sisters who may or may not have a history of an eating disorder are eating this raw food to cure their autoimmune disease. Well, guess what? It actually really did help their autoimmune disease. And then the doctors, of course, wanted to have them on. And they were savvy enough to know, like, this is a setup. Like, these doctors don't really want to interview us. They want to make an example of us and highlight the fact that we've had eating disorders and sort of tell people, like, don't do this crazy thing. They definitely ate cooked food, but they were eating some like steak tartare and maybe some raw liver, and the Daily Mail and the doctors. So they knew me, and I was interested in the carnivore diet at the time. And they said, hey, will you come on the doctors with us? I was living in San Diego at the time. And so, yeah, I went to LA in person. They couldn't come in person. So I go to LA. I've never been on network television. You get there at like 6 a.m. and they're like, the producer comes in. She's like, well, they want to do like a little debate. And I was like, great. Like, I sent you guys 20 studies and a bibliography that I'm going to cite during this thing. Like, we'll do a debate. We're like, okay. And they want to bring in another doctor. I was like, how many doctors are going to be debating me? Like, they want to bring in Joel Kahn, who's a well-known vegan doctor. So they're going to bring in him. I'm like, they've got like four doctors and a lawyer on the stage, a doctor in the audience with me. So it's like,
that lawyer is fucking brutal, dude.
She was brutal, man.
Yeah.
Doesn't look very healthy or happy.
No.
And then they want to bring in a vegan cardiologist who's on Zoom. And then I'm in the audience. And apparently they had like applause tracks and they were cueing the audience behind me. And anyway, and then Ashley and Sarah are on the TV. So they're on Zoom. Joel Kahn's on Zoom. I'm there like just by myself with like 5 doctors. And then they proceeded they fucking teed off, dude. It was crazy. It was such a good learning experience. But yeah, like the doctor in the audience just throws a big fit and they're all like cool and calm. And they like ask one like respectful question. So Dr. Saladino, what makes you interested in a carnivore diet? Or why would you think this is good? And as soon as I got done speaking, they just started teeing off. It was like, boom, 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 boom. They wouldn't let me talk. There were pieces that were edited out where I was like, you know, guys, like I sent you a list of references. We haven't looked at a single reference. Did you read any of my references? Like I came here to debate and I'm getting railroaded. And they were like, oh no, you're not getting railroaded. And yeah, they question your credentials. So it's like, what the fuck? Like, she's like, the lawyer's like, who are you to discuss this diet? I'm like, who am I? Who are you? Like, who is anybody? Like, I'm a guy who read the studies. Like, I learned how to.
Yeah, she's like a fat lawyer sitting there. Like, how's that?
I know.
Like, who are you to tell you to not talk about it?
And the whole thing is comical because here we have 2 women whose autoimmune disease got better, and they just wanted to throw in stuff like, well, they're going to get gout or they're going to get colon cancer. And of course, a daytime television show isn't the place where you actually look at the literature and go down the rabbit holes looking at, well, actually metabolic dysfunction is the primary cause of, you know, gout and uric acid, not necessarily organ meats if you're metabolically healthy. Anyway, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, no, I would say to people, I'd watch it, but at the same time, like, it'll probably just annoy you if you watch it. So maybe don't. It was, like you did a good job of staying composed though. And, not getting, letting it get the best of you. And their, I don't know, demeanor, I think just, you can tell even in the comment section on their own channel, like their demeanor came across very poorly in general to the audience, to like the actual audience watching the video, not the fake audience in the fucking thing. That it was, I don't know, I think it was a win overall for you at the end of the day.
I didn't feel like it was a win at the time, but
Yeah.
I'm glad it was. I really was like, man, I was unprepared. I got railroaded. And the whole story, I'll just tell the story. So the lady in the audience with me was MELINA JAMPOLIS. She's an internist. And after the TV show, I walked back up, we go to our dressing rooms, and I walk into her dressing room. I'm like, hey, you know, there's so many studies. And she just starts yelling at me. I was like, whoa, they had to call security. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then I see her again outside, and the producer's there, and she's like, guys like you that are like handsome, they're charismatic, they get a following. And she was like, you deserve that. And I was like, I deserve to get railroaded? I was like, what are you talking about? They had to call security again. She's like losing her shit in the parking lot.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was really pretty crazy. And then the producer's saying stuff like, oh, there's no vitamin K in animal foods. And I'm like, what are you, like, have you heard of vitamin K? Like, what are you guys don't even know what you're talking about. Like, at this point, there was no science. It was just like, we're going to make this guy look bad. So anyway, it was crazy, but
at least I think their idea, like a TV producer, I'm assuming, is in such like a old school mentality. They probably thought this was going to be like a win against you, and I think it was like a net loss ultimately, for sure, because I think more people were like, oh, maybe this guy, he's the only one who doesn't seem insane right now. So like maybe there's some viability to it.
Man, I'm glad it looked that way, because I was just kind of like incredulous the whole time and like, what are we doing? Oh my God. And then of course I wanted to debate them after. I was like, you know, MELINA, come on my podcast. Let's have a real debate. The other guy, Travis Stork, come on my podcast. Nobody would even engage. And then I think they actually dissolved. So like everybody on this crew was let go. And now the Doctors is based out of, I think, New York, and there's like a single doctor. So like I don't think it had anything to do with my episode, but they dissolved the show after that season.
Oh, wow. Who's like the head host guy? Like I've seen him in every single episode, seemingly.
Travis Stork.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And he was on social media. He might have his own podcast now. Maybe we can convince him like, hey man, let's do a debate, you know, because he's the one like throwing up his hands and having a tantrum. Like everybody knows, you know, that plant foods are good. And I'm just like, well, you know, like maybe there's benefits, but let's talk about it. And here's why I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, like even like we're doing a podcast right now, and like I don't necessarily like even follow that, you know, ideology myself, where like I have, you know, vegetables and I have certain things in my diet that are, you know, plant-based, but it's not like we can't have a reasonable, intelligent discussion about it and, you know, go over the pros and cons of everything. And it's kind of hard, I feel like, to debate the nutrient density of like organ meats, for example, like unless you have some like, you know, like religious issue with it, or like, I don't know, something from like that's kind of like like a outlier issue. Like ultimately it is kind of like clear as day that there is, you know, most people would benefit from inclusion of it in some capacity, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other inequality that I think is so illustrative is the fact that there are this unique set of nutrients that only occur in animal foods. Some people might say there's a unique set of nutrients that only occur in plant foods, and we can talk about that counter argument. But, you know, I mean, creatine, carnitine, choline, carnosine, anserine, taurine, B12, K2, like the list goes on, riboflavin, like you can't really get these in any appreciable quantity in plant foods very easily. So if you want those things, you should include animal foods in your diet. That's a huge step for most people. And then the other thing that I think is interesting is if you look at, and this is probably something your audience is very aware of, like, you know, how do you saturate your muscles with creatine? A clearly well-studied ergogenic substance. It's 5 grams a day, right? Like that's the chronic, or 20 grams a day for a week. Well, how do you get 5 grams a day of creatine? Well, you can eat a kilogram of meat per day. Like, okay, like maybe a lot of us could benefit by eating more meat. I'm not saying we all have to eat a kilogram of meat per day, but if we want to, I mean, that's probably for a 70 kilogram or a 75 kilogram male. For me, like we talked about, I'm getting a kilogram of meat per day. And believe me, if I gave a kilogram of meat to the Hadza, they would eat it every single freaking day. Like in the Hadza and the Kung, it's like the amount of meat eaten is only proportional to the success of their hunts. They'll eat all the meat they can get. So I think a lot of people fear meat, but there's an interesting sort of biological optimization there around muscle performance that is 5 grams of creatine a day. Like that's a good thing to go on, you know. But many would say like, oh, it's that much meat is bad for you, and that's where I get into like interesting debates for people.